Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome. This is episode number 222 of Something Else. Feature Heralds in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action number 60 from August 27, 2003. My name is Arya, and joining this week, as always, is the Marina Shafir to my Willow Nightingale. It's Cyndi. Cyndi, how the hell you doing today?
Does that mean I have to wear a stupid hat and cut one of the worst promos of all time?
Well, how much do you dislike Albany?
Never been.
Well, I mean, I think it's a delightful little city. However, apparently they were mean about helping to raise Marina Shafir, so they deserved getting yelled at and being called the problem. And
Well, the same thing can be said about a lot of governments nowadays. That's not this podcast. We're to talk about
allegedly.
how big of a problem TNA was back in the day.
Yes, we are. But hey, we have another not bad show to talk about this week, in my humble opinion.
That's debatable.
Well, that's why we have a podcast to debate such things. If we just agreed about everything, the show would suck. And if this is the first time you've ever listened to us do this show does not suck. We're like Pat Patterson on Attitude Era Raw when Stone Cold Steve Austin told him that he sucks. He came out the next week on Raw and informed us that he does not suck. Just with a heavy French accent. We're the Pat Patterson. We're the 1998 Pat Patterson of podcasts. We don't suck.
At least not unintentionally.
Anywho, NWA TNA number 682703. We have less than 52 episodes to go. So before we dive in, we'd like to tell you what is happening in the world of TNA via the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And so this show this week, we don't get this every week, but when we do, I try to report it. The show drew a packed house of 1,300 people, and because they've gone back to giving away free tickets, 60 to 70% are at the show for free. Basically, everybody who is not that annoying group of people right in front of the camera, they pay, everybody else doesn't. You think AJ and Russo had to pay for their tickets last week when they were there dressed like Jason and Freddy Krueger?
No, they probably were smart enough to get into the paper line.
Well, the problem with that is what if they had been too far back in the line?
Oh, they got there first.
From what I've heard, you had to be there really fucking early because people really like their free wrestling, and they would have to be there pretty damn early, and which would be selling the gimmick quite well if you were to ask me, if they were to do that. Well, speaking of Vinny Brew, now we have noted that the last few weeks and perhaps even the last month or so, the shows have been not bad. We've had several not bad shows in a row. And you might be sitting here thinking to yourself, man, did Vince Russo have an aneurysm? Well, to some degree, because that aneurysm has a name. And that name is Jerry Jarrett. And while Vince Russo and Glen Gilberti are still the ones that write the first draft of the script, Jerry Jarrett has had a bigger hand in chopping it up, editing it, and fine tuning the product that ends up on your television screen every week, which quite possibly is why the shows have been very not bad lately. And you know how we have a new member of the new church? Jim Cornette's wife Stacy has stepped in, and we were wondering what happened to Brian Lee.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out Brian Lee no-showed, and so he got fired and replaced by Sinn, who, despite my jokes, is not Jim Cornette's wife Stacy, even though that was the name she used in OVW forever and a day. Except she spelled it with a Y. The Sinn that we have spells it with an I.
And an
That
extra
and
N.
they both had two N's. She was Sinn and he was Sinn. Unless you're telling me one of them had three N's.
I don't want to know about 3N sins.
Alrighty. I compare it to me and most other Arias. Most Arias are ARIA. I'm ARYA, and I'm much cooler than the ARIAs. And Stacy Cornett is much cooler than Kazarni.
I will say
Um,
this. As much as I like you, you are not cooler than Arya of Sorrow.
and how does Arya Stark spell her name?
That's a Castlevania game.
You said Arya Stark.
No, I said Arya of Sorrow.
She doesn't count.
It's
Um,
like,
and even if she did count, I'm sure I'm much cooler than she is. Is she doing a podcast? No.
yeah, but here's the question. Do you fling around a massive sword of holiness, of holy light?
I would never fling around anything called a sword of holy light.
It's called the
Give
Chime
me,
Solars.
well, I would definitely swing around something with that name, but not if you call it the sword of holy light.
Would
I
you
can't
cast
wait to
magic
see the
called
AI.
holy?
I cannot wait to see the AI description of this show, by the way. If you haven't noticed, I've been taking the AI descriptions that Zoom has been sending me and using them as the previews for these shows lately. So, in case you've ever read the previews for these shows and thought, wow, Arya sure is speaking in a very disjointed way, well, it's not so much Arya, it's she pops for Zoom's AI description of the show and she just throws it up there.
It's
Anyway,
AI Arya.
uh, sadly, my name doesn't end with an A sound because, like I have with our other co-host, Trey I, which I may have to end up using one of these days. Anywho, on to the show. Did you notice that Mike Tenay this week called the show TNA? Now, unless he's done this more recently, I just never noticed it. Although to be fair, we've had a lot of shows that have been missing several minutes at the beginning. Uh, Tenay always calls it NWA Total Nonstop Action, but this week, for quite possibly the first time, he called it TNA.
It starts to make sense. I mean, let's face it, the NWA doesn't draw. Even
Well, it's not like
nowadays, it doesn't
TNA is
draw.
drawing.
Well, TNA's young.
So you're telling me that the TV show that was on Twitter and now is on the Roku channel isn't drawing?
That is absolutely correct. The only reason the Roku channel has it because they need live sports or some sports like programming.
Did you see what happened at the NWA anniversary show?
No, what happened?
We have a new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Bram, I guess all of his TNA contracts have expired and his NWA contracts have expired too. Bram has lost the NWA title to Thrillbilly Silas Young.
Like I said, NWA does not draw.
whoever the hell that is. I'll say this: if you're not going to draw, you might as well draw with somebody who isn't getting paid much, because even Bram, who's not exactly a top star, Bram is certainly demanding more money than someone named Thrillbilly Silas Young. Is
Also,
it
he's been
Silas Young?
around for a while in NWA, but it doesn't help that he's the champion of a company of nothing.
Pardon me, it's not Silas Young, it's Silas Mason. Silas Young was the guy in ROH for the longest time.
Yeah, he was the last real man.
Yes, this is somebody entirely different. Anywho, let's go to the
Silas
opener.
Young would have drawn some eyeballs.
I don't know about that either. But let's go to the opener here. It is Shane Douglas and the Disciples of the New Church with Father James Mitchell versus 3 Live Crew. If nothing else, this is a new match. And to be perfectly honest, when Douglas, Slash, and Sinn came out, I was expecting the opponents. In fact, I started writing it out. I expected the opponents to be CM Punk, Julio De Niro, and Alexis Lurie. And it was not them. Jim Mitchell tried to join the announce table, but his headset didn't work while Conan was forcing Slash to perform oral sex on him. Remember when BG tried to give Miss TNA Bruce the pump handle slam where he'd simulate anal sex on his opponent and then was disgusted that Bruce enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Yes. It wasn't even like that was the most fucked up thing. It's like it wasn't that, he was forcing anal sex on his opponent. It's that he did it to somebody who enjoyed it. That was the part that was crossing the line, Cyndi. We approve of forced anal sex as long as the person doesn't enjoy it. Speaking of lines of be taken out of context if anyone ever listens to this show.
Just to let everybody know that even though Arya and I talk before the show, some of the stuff that she does say, I have no answer for. This is one of those times. Remember, consent is king.
Do you really want you and I to discuss everything we're going to talk about before the show? I've got stuff I'm going to discuss later I haven't told you about because I want your honest reaction to it.
Right.
I'm not going to get your honest reaction if I tell you 24 hours in advance.
True, and that's one of the worst fucking lines you said on this entire program.
Oh, you should listen to the Tuesday show if you think this is bad. I haven't even recorded the Tuesday show yet. I just know that somehow Trey and I have come up with something really bad on yesterday's show. So anyway, Mitchell was given a microphone with no headset, so he had to lean in to talk to and hear Tenay. He reiterated his plan was for Raven to lose his hair, and then left the announce desk before Tenay and West could say anything.
Oh, he also dropped something else, and we didn't bring this up on last week's show. Alexis Lurie is gone.
They kind of say that, but it does. But yeah, it comes out, especially next week, that Alexis left. She got a WWE deal, and she's officially gone to eventually become Mickie James, and
become one of the best female wrestlers of the past 20 years.
Again, it was one of those funny things where it's like her real name is Mickie James. And I'm always like, how do people come up with their wrestling names? Like, how is your name Mickie James and you came up with Alexis Lurie? Or like, and I mentioned this before, Chris Sabin. It's such a generic real person name. How did you come up with Chris Sabin as your wrestling name? Anywho, after Truth gets a hot tag, we break down into a 6-way. Mitchell got in the ring and distracted Truth, which ultimately led to nothing. Finally, CM Punk and Julio De Niro ran in, and it was not a disqualification. Instead, the match was just thrown out. I thought this was your usual 3LK 6-man tag, just without a finish. And honestly, I was like, when they came out, I was kind of like, man, I wonder who's actually going to go over in this match, because I'm like, Shane Douglas is obviously being pushed for the Raven feud. The New Church are his minions. And then 3LK is always they always have a bit of a push, even if they're not really being used much. So it's like, I guess BG will probably take the fall. But
Or
then
Slash will take the fall.
I think it's too much having Shane Douglas lose, even if he didn't lose. So it's like I think, ultimately it probably would be best if they just didn't have this match at all. But 3LK is a pseudo important part of this show, so we have to have them on. I gave this match a 3.5 out of 10.
I just gave it a 3 out of 10. I thought it was okay, I guess. But what took me out of the match as well was, how early TNA production kind of sucks. Like, what took me out of the match was, we need a microphone for Mitchell. Open Mitchell's headset. We need a open Mitchell's headset. That was constant for the first 3 minutes of this match.
And by the way, the TNA producer is Keith Mitchell, who is in WCW forever and is the producer or the director or whatever of AEW right now. So it's not like they have some jamoke who's never done wrestling before, running the truck.
It's just that It took 20 years before some jamoke actually figured out how to do
it. I'm shocked that like AEW rarely has any missed shots on their TV shows, because Keith Mitchell really sucked at shooting exhibition matches in the late 2000s, when it became very video game like wrestling, where there were constant dives and flips. He was missing them left, right, and everywhere in between. So Scott Hudson isn't here this week. So get ready for a phrase I'm going to say a lot over at least the next 2 weeks. Terry Taylor is backstage with. And in this case, Terry Taylor is backstage with Sonny, Siaki, and Trinity. And by backstage at this point, I mean the parking lot, because remember last week when a hearse got backed into the parking lot with Sonny, Siaki, and Trinity? Apparently, they really liked that, so they backed a hearse in again this week. What is it with Vince Russo and cars? I guess, spoiler alert, the one good thing is that they haven't actually destroyed this hearse yet. And, if Vince Russo likes doing anything, it's destroying cars.
Well, they can't. It's rented.
Yes. Now, that has never stopped him or any other wrestling personality for destroying a car. Do you remember how the Jack Perry CM Punk thing got going? Because he wanted to destroy
that was
a rental
car.
Yeah. So anyway, Taylor told Siaki that his match is now. So Siaki left the parking lot, walked into the arena and to the ring. And for some reason, Trinity was left backstage. Now again, remember when we talked about last week about how D'Lo Brown sat patiently waiting in a coffin all day long for the spot where Sonny Siaki would eventually come out and open up his coffin lid? Keep that in mind, because we have a follow-up to that, kind of. So then we get Sonny Siaki versus D'Lo Brown. Siaki tried to attack on the ramp, but that didn't work out for him, which included a D'Lo moonsault from the apron to the floor. Moments later, D'Lo tried to dive feet first through the ropes, but he got stalled on the ropes, which worked out for the match anyway, since the intended spot was Siaki catching him and giving him a powerbomb on the floor to take over. And even though D'Lo is much lighter than he was at his worst in like 97, 98, that's still a very large man to catch it in that kind of position. And let's see here. D'Lo caught Siaki with a diamond cutter off the ropes to begin his comeback. Trinity finally ran back inside so she could distract the referee and D'Lo, which let Siaki hit the Siacalypse for a near fall. Trinity gave D'Lo a tornado DDT, which the referee somehow did not see, and Siaki won with a move that used to be called the Siacalypse now, but apparently has had a name change to the much worse Siaki Driver. I swear, Vinny V once pointed out that in the 2000s, you took your name and added bomb driver, or I forget the third word, and that was your finish.
Plex.
And now we have the Siaki Driver, which again is not as good of a name as Siacalypse now. After the match, Siaki and Trinity beat on D'Lo through the crowd and out the back door to where the hearse was parked, when Jeff Jarrett randomly showed up out of the hearse and pulled a guitar that was randomly in said hearse and broke it over Siaki's head. Jeff Jarrett was apparently waiting inside the hearse all day long for this moment where he could come out and hit Sonny Siaki with a guitar. Now, am I forgetting, like, why was Jeff Jarrett and Sonny Siaki? Why did Jeff Jarrett give a fuck about Sonny Siaki and D'Lo Brown?
Because Siaki's affiliated with Russo.
So what? It's like, so is Trinity. And, well, I guess I shouldn't say this because it'll happen next week or something, or in 2 weeks. But it's like, next thing, Jarrett will just beat up Trinity, especially since Mickie James isn't here anymore. We need a new woman to constantly be assaulted on this show, and Trinity's right there. So after the match, I already said that. The match itself was all right. I gave it a 4.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 2.
Are you sure we didn't swap brains this week when it came to match ratings?
I have written here, and this is going to be a constant theme for the show. Oh, gee, referee Rudy Charles is a fucking moron. What a shock.
I thought Rudy Charles was your favorite referee of all the time.
No, he will never top the greatness of refereeing when it comes to Tommy Young.
By the way, we do have some quote-unquote breaking news right now. The double title reign of JC Jane is apparently over, as Ash by Elegance has won the TNA Knockouts title. Yes, Dana Brooke is a champion. I don't know. I just saw the graphic saying "and new," all that shit. So that whole thing lasted a long time, barely a month. Anywho, so Mike Tenay and Don West are running down the rest of the show when Don Callis MBA came up and said he can't believe that Eric Watts would book Jerry Lynn in an X Division title match after his behavior these last few weeks. Callis said he's not obsessed with Jerry Lynn. He's obsessed with people following the rules. And to be honest, I'm like curious where this Don Callis Jerry Lynn thing is going, because to the best of my knowledge, Don Callis has one match in TNA, and it's not against Jerry Lynn.
Nope.
All right.
Where's this thing going? I'll tell you, nowhere.
So on a show where we're going to have two fairly bad matches, I would like to say that the worst thing on the show was next. Terry Taylor is with Michael Shane. And Michael Shane is your X Division champion, and he is now wearing sunglasses inside. And because Vince Russo thinks the greatest thing in the world that you can do is to imitate more successful wrestlers, Michael Shane is now openly acting like his cousin Shawn Michaels. He is trying to do a Shawn Michaels voice impression. We'll see later. I mean, the super kick is a move that 8 billion people have used, but it's like later on we'll see like he's tuning up the band to do a super kick. And during this promo, he calls himself the icon, the showstopper, the main event, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels' cousin, Michael Shane. It's like, okay, it's obvious, and I never even know this was a fucking thing, but it's obvious this thing does not last long, because when I got into TNA when I was younger, which is about a year or so, Michael Shane is not doing a blatant Shawn Michaels impression gimmick. So let's hope this is a 1-week wonder. I guess we're going to get Juventud Guerrera next week, still doing his rock impression. Gimmick. So, you think Vince Russo would understand at some point that some people have their own fucking personalities. And at least at this point, this isn't an internet thing like it was when, Juvi started becoming The Rock in WCW. It's because people on the internet thought it would be funny. It's like, but still, Michael Shane has his own personality. And we know this because Michael Shane is going to be on TNA for like the next 5 years. We know he has his own personality that he can come out with. But instead, we're just going to have him be a blatant Shawn Michaels ripoff. Again,
And
easily the worst thing that's happened on this show.
so far, yeah. I also have here Michael Shane can't cut a promo to save his life right now.
I'm going to bet he'd be better if he wasn't too busy trying to be his cousin.
True.
Has he ever talked on this show before now?
He had the promos before Ultimate X, and he sounded fine, I guess.
Yes, there you go. He sounded perfectly fine. He did not have to do an impression of his cousin. Was he the greatest promo ever? No, but he's like a 22, 23-year-old kid. No one would have expected him to be, the greatest promo ever. And if he was, we would call him MJF and put a extremely gaudy world title belt on him, which is not a spoiler if you haven't seen Forbidden Door, but by the way, I'm mad. I've gotten 2 predictions right this year, and I was so confident in a 3rd prediction being right, and I ended up being wrong. Do you care if I give away Forbidden Door spoilers?
I don't care.
All right, so fast forward 45 seconds if you don't hear Forbidden Door spoiler. So my prediction was, since they did the thing on Dynamite last week where MJF no longer had to cash in his contract to get the title shot, that they would have the match, Hangman would win, and then they do some sort of shenanigans after the match where somebody beat up Hangman, and then MJF would cash in the contract and win the title. Exactly 1/3 of that was right. Hangman won the match. By the way, I don't know how it's a Forbidden Door spoiler since, by the time you hear this, the show will have been 4 days ago, but whatever. So then we get X Division champion Michael Shane versus Jerry Lynn. Hey, Cindy, do you remember back on February 12th when Lynn got won a title shot and then didn't actually get the match for like 2 months? I think this is a make good now. We're like,
Yeah.
You know what? We screwed the poor guy a couple times. Let's give him a random title shot for the hell of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I didn't notice this last week, although Lynn has been having sporadic appearances on the show lately. He dyed his goatee in this week, so it's more pronounced. Although I guess he must have done it last week, and we'll talk about that next week. But anyway, Callis is on commentary for this match, and believe it or not, the headset actually works for him. And remember when Jerry Lynn took on Frankie Kazarian, I think it was last month, and I said, imagine if Jerry Lynn wrestled Frankie Kazarian for 6 months, how good Frankie Kazarian would be. Much like how Jerry Lynn had that 6-month feud with AJ Styles, and then AJ went from being good to exceptional. Much like the same I said that about Kazarian, I'm going to say that about Michael Shane. Imagine if he feuded with Jerry Lynn for 6 months, where Michael Shane could be. Anyway, Shane took Lynn down and slapped him in the back of the head, so Lynn returned the favor. They fought to the floor where Lynn slammed Shane face first into the announce desk in front of Callis. Back in the ring, they go, and they are really pushing that Shane is related to Shawn Michaels. And this is where I wrote, the fact that this isn't a shove down your throat later on really tells you how well this got over. Lynn blocked the super kick and used a kick to the face. We had Lynn do a ground and pound, punching Shane in the face, which caused Callis to freak out and storm to the back. Lynn went for the cradle pile driver, but red shirt security ran down to distract Lynn, causing Shane to retain his title with a super kick. I wrote, this was a pretty good match, all things considered. A 6.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 6 out of 10, essentially for the same reason you did. I called another great X Division match ruined by the storyline of Jerry Lynn versus Don Callis that goes nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, at this point, we don't know it goes nowhere because, when you're watching this week to week, you're not really supposed to know that, hey, this is just going to get dropped at some point. But yeah, it's a feud that We don't know why it's happening, and neither do they.
Like, you'd figure this should lead to something like maybe Don Callis uses red shirt security to take out Lynn, but Lynn takes them out and has to, that forces Callis to bring in somebody from Lynn's past, or maybe just buy Abyss from Kid Cash or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, who could they bring in from Jerry Lynn's past? Because, I mean, you know, if you're going to say we're going to bring in someone from Jerry Lynn's past, you end up thinking it's either going to be Sean Waltman, who they're not happy about using at the moment, Just Incredible, who they just used and let go, or Rob Van Dam, who is not coming in. But, oh well.
Has Lane
So,
Storm been fired yet by WWE?
well, since he never actually got fired, no. Um, he retired, and then a year later, his contract expired, and he decided to leave to go open up a wrestling school in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
One of the best wrestling
So,
schools in the world.
so earlier today, Mike Tenay interviewed Raven. Now, I got to tell you, if they would have said this ahead of time, my brain would have been going to the wow, how did they do this? Because every Mike Tenay interview is him sitting on a chair on the ramp, interviewing somebody else sitting on a chair on the ramp. And every Raven promo is him sitting in a dark room with a red light bulb and some candles around him. So I think the ultimate Mike Tenay interviews Raven uh, thing would have been a split screen where Mike Tenay is sitting on a chair on the ramp and Raven is sitting in a room with a red light bulb and some candles, and they're looking at each other and it's somehow shot, and it's TNA production, so I can't imagine they could ever have pulled this off, but it's shot in a way where it's like you're supposed to believe they're sitting next to each other kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anywho, Raven talked about how Tommy Rich, the greatest NWA world champion of all time, was the NWA champion, lost the belt, got into feud with Buzz Sawyer, and never got back to the world title. Raven said that he was ECW champion, lost the belt, and then got distracted by feuds with Dreamer and the Sandman. Of course, the problem with that is he feuded with Dreamer and the Sandman while he was the ECW champion. In fact, Sandman was the guy that he took the belt from twice. Raven said Shane Douglas, Jim Mitchell, and the Mystery Man are trying to keep him from the NWA title, but he has never taken his eyes off the prize. At that point, AJ Styles and Vince Russo found the red light room, which was actually a red light stairway, and it led to Raven slapping AJ and Russo dragging him away. And guess what? It turns out when you have people cut promos, doing these Mike Tenay promos, that they're not out there trying to out-talk Mike Tenay, to win brownie points with Russo. Turns out these things can actually be pretty good. And Raven, I thought, cut a pretty good promo here.
Yeah. I called it one of the most normal promos Raven cut in a long time. And it also helped build up the main event, so points all around.
You would have gotten more points if this would have had more of a build than 1 week and had Raven not win the title shot at the end of last week's show.
Yeah.
So then we get Abyss versus the Sandman, and I was kind of hoping that the Sandman's entrance would be the longest part of this match. And even though the Sandman's entrance went fucking forever, which admittedly is the best part of any Sandman match, the match itself went forever plus a minute. The match started with Sandman spitting beer in Abyss's face and hitting him with a cane twice before the referee suddenly remembered that there are rules in wrestling, so he pulled the cane away. Abyss then pulled Sandman's shirt up to chop him because why? A table got pulled out and Kid Cash comes out. If you remember last week, Abyss eliminated Kid Cash from the Gauntlet match, and Kid Cash is pissed. So Kid Cash came out and kicked Abyss in the groin, and then he tried to give Abyss a hurricanrana over the top rope through the table. But A, Kid Cash, like, this was not a smart move. Abyss could not give himself a hurricanrana over the top rope. He ended up getting hung up on the top rope. And on the way down, Abyss, 6'6", 350 pounds or so, could not break the table. The table went into business for itself.
I am the table.
And then despite that, and keep in mind, this was supposed to be what happens next, even if Abyss would have went through the damn table. Abyss stood up, went into the ring, and immediately pinned the Sandman with a black hole slam. I didn't look. Is this the end of the Sandman in TNA?
Oh, no, he's around for a while.
Well, this was a fucking burial. I thought that. Remember when they did the fucking match with him and Carino versus the Heresies, and I thought that was a fucking burial? Like, they really enjoy burying the Sandman, I guess.
Sandman doesn't care. He gets paid like $1,000 per shot, so why not?
If Sandman's getting $1,000 per shot, TNA deserved to be in the shit place that it is this day. I doubt he gets more than $500, and even then, I'd bet they try to get him to $300. This wasn't good, and it got worse the longer it went. And I still gave it a generous 1.0 out of 10.
Now it's my turn to be generous to a match over you, because I gave it a 3 out of 10. I thought it was all right. You forgot how Kid Cash shoved the ref into the Sandman and knocked both of them out. Which tells me this wasn't Rudy Charles.
By the way, you thought this match was better than Sonny Siaki versus D'Lo Brown? Didn't you give that a 2?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Because Rudy Charles is an idiot and should be fired from his job.
Well, in addition to Rudy Charles being an idiot, Abyss is apparently an idiot too. Because Kid Cash is now backstage with Terry Taylor, and Terry Taylor demands to know why Cash did what he did to Abyss. And so Abyss got backstage, and he got all down in Cash's face. Cash got mad at Terry Taylor for telling Abyss to stand up for himself and slapped Terry Taylor. And that led to Abyss standing between Cash and Taylor, protecting Kid Cash, and refusing to allow Terry Taylor to go after him. In the interest of fairness, backstage announcers are not supposed to fight the wrestlers.
Oh, this will come to a head in a few weeks. Arya was kicking around promo ideas for the Mid-South show.
It was?
Yeah. Taglines for the Mid-South show. You had one rejected for Terry Taylor.
It didn't get rejected. I just, ended up not using it.
Oh, you're going to use it in a few weeks.
Well, for those who actually listen to the show, you would know what my nickname is for Terry Taylor. Terry Taylor, who is a little bitch. He is the Mid-South champion of television, and every week we get to see how much of a bitch Terry Taylor is. And it's just getting worse and worse every week that goes by.
And for Terry Taylor, who is a little bitch, of course, he will be wrestling Kid Cash in a few weeks.
Yippee-ki-yay, Melon Farmer.
So I look forward to that being a tagline for 4 weeks from now. Kid Cash versus Terry Taylor, who is a little bitch.
So up next, we got the NWA Tag Team Champion as America's Most Wanted versus Simon Diamond and Johnny Swinger. Notably, main event Glen Gilberti is not at ringside due to preparing for his bull rope match with Dusty Rhodes. The challengers attacked on the floor and the fight was on. Not the match, but the fight. Harris at one point somehow had a chain that he was choking and dragging Diamond around by. Tenay was shocked by it, but no one seemed to know where the hell the chain came from. Finally, after several minutes, they rolled into the ring just long enough for the bell to ring to start the match. At one point, I was wondering where the hell did the referee go, because there was just no referee in the ring for like 30 or 45 seconds. And I don't know where the hell he went or what the hell happened, but Rudy Charles eventually got in the ring and, as the match got going. Then I thought Mike Tenay was telegraphing the finish, and I was pissed. Because randomly, in the middle of this match, for the first time in months, Tenay reminds us that a title can change hands on a disqualification. And I'm like, why would he randomly bring that up if that's not going to be the finish of this match? Which was annoying me because the last time I got brought up was the last time we got a title change on a DQ. And reminded me of, remember when WWE would do the hardcore title matches and JR would make a point during the matches that were going to have all the interference to say that the title on the line 24/7, and thus telling you, hey, there's going to be a bunch of people running in, and you may be a new viewer and may not know why the hell they're doing this. So I'm going to tell you in advance, oh yeah, they can do this. But yeah.
Well, this is around the time where they were siphoning a whole bunch of viewers from WCW, so.
Well, that was this was happening in 2002. And honestly, it was after The Undertaker was champion, because when The Undertaker was champion, they didn't do the stupid 24/7 shit. Actually, when Van Dam was champion, they didn't do it with him either.
Yeah, they kind of dropped it after 2001.
They dropped it when, I think pretty much when Kane won the title at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, who's going to attack Kane like that? And like, it was a thing that ran its course. Like, it was a funny thing when Crash Holly did it. And then, like, they made a point when Steve Blackman won the title. There was a skit where all the geeks tried to attack Steve Blackman, and instead of running away, Blackman just beat their fucking asses. And then it's like, I don't think it ever really happened again with the the hardcore title, at least while Blackman was champion. And then it kind of picked up again when Raven won it, and then later on when it became the opening match Raw title, and like they were doing 3 or 4 title changes on every house show in like 2002. Like, if you go back and look, the hardcore title changed hands like 500 times in 2002 because they were doing it on every house show.
And that's how Raven got to be, 36-time hardcore champion?
Yeah, Crash was like 28-time. Raven was like 30, 35-time. Sean Stasiak is like a 12-time champion. You know? We live in a world where Sean Stasiak was a WWE champion like a dozen times. Anyway, back to this match. Chris Harris got the hot tag and was upset that he did not beat Simon Diamond with a top rope crossbody, which is a move he never wins a match with until he becomes Braden Walker. Both Harris and Storm get hit low, with the one on Harris almost leading to a pinfall. We had a stacked up stupid plex, which was at least better executed than the last time we had that move on this show. Out sauntered main event Glen Gilberti for immoral support. He distracted the referee while Diamond grabbed the tag team title belt, so Harris kicked it into Diamond's face. And Gilberti was vehemently telling the referee what happened. And I'm like, oh my God, are they going to fucking do a disqualification because the heel manager told the referee that somebody cheated? And like, I was ready to flip out. And ultimately, what the hell is the point of this? Because Gilberti is vehemently yelling at the referee that this happened. The referee is walking over to the timekeeper, and in the ring, Simon and Swinger just hit the problem solver on Chris Harris and get the pin to win the titles.
Oh, you missed a lot when it comes to that ending.
What did I miss?
Okay, here's how the ending happened. Glenn distracts the referee. Diamond goes for the belt that Swinger threw in. Harris kicks the belt into Diamond's face. Rudy sees the pin, but he's still distracted by the raw sexual prowess of Glen Gilberti. He finally goes to count. 1, 2, Glen pulls out Rudy Charles at DQ much. So Rudy runs to Borash, and while Rudy's doing that, Glen decks Harris with a chair. And then the problem solver for Swinger and Diamond to become the new champs. This is a 4 out of 10. Fuck Rudy Charles.
I didn't miss anything. I just made it more concise. And a screwy, overbooked finish to bring down an otherwise good match. 5.5 out of 10. Now, here's an interesting little note. This match happened on, as we noted, August 27, 2003. Johnny Swinger would eventually come back to TNA doing his retro gimmick in like 2019 or so. And he was in the company until like the end of 2023. Actually, I think he pretty much, I don't think he ever got re-signed once they went back to being TNA. Anywho, Johnny Swinger's last title match in TNA was 20 years later to the day, August 27, 2023, when he unsuccessfully challenged Kenny King for the digital media title at Emergence 2023. So,
yeah,
there's your random factoid of the day. And by the way, Swinger so should have won that match. Just saying. Yeah. After the match, Dusty Rhodes finally walked in for help, but it was too little too late. He took the mic and called this unadulterated bullshit. He told Gilberti to get his ass to the ring so he could kick it. And spoiler alert, much like when Eric Watts cursed a few weeks ago, Dusty will not be fired like how New Jack was fired for cursing on the show a few weeks before that. I'm not saying I'm begging New Jack to still be on the show and be a regular part of it, but hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to fire one person for cussing, we should need a new director of authority. So we get Dusty Rhodes versus Glen Gilberti in a bull rope match. And wouldn't it have been better? Because, I was assuming, somebody with a brain would. I was assuming that Dusty Rhodes was about to whoop Glen Gilberti's ass, leave him a bloody mess, and, it would have made more sense for this match to have gone on before the tag title match. So this way, then, Glen Gilberti gets his heat back by helping his guys win the tag belts. Oh, well. So I guess I also should have been figured this shit out when Dusty took 99% of the match and was just beating on Glen Gilberti all throughout the match. And then the finish was randomly Christopher Daniels running in and hitting Dusty with brass knuckles so Gilberti could get the pin. So I guess ultimately it didn't matter what the match order was since that didn't really matter. And this ended up being all about the post-match where Chris Harris ran in for the save but got laid out by Simon and Swinger. And instead of Storm, Jeff Jarrett ran in and laid out all four heels by himself. Because we're getting to the return of Stone Cold Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett hasn't put himself over giant groups of people in a while. So we got to get this all set up again for him. I gave it
1 out of 10.
I gave it a 1 out of 10.
All right, we're back on track.
What was that?
We're back on track. Because this match lasted 4 minutes and was about 4 minutes too long.
Mike Tenay was now with Mad Mikey before the show began. Tenay asked Mikey about his temper tantrums. Mikey brought up the Life cereal commercials, how he likes it. Mikey likes it. And Tenay asked him to consider counseling. Mikey spent the whole interview trying to control his anger, and apparently he does not want to be called Mad Mikey. So why doesn't he just tell us what he wants to be called? And the climax, for lack of a better word, of this promo was him basically saying he masturbates a lot. Did I miss anything?
Else to add. I have nothing else
Apparently,
to add.
Apparently,
This
at
was
some point,
bad.
he apparently took off Mike Tenay's shoe, which I they they bring this up next week. They takes off Mike Tenay's shoe during this promo. I didn't even fucking notice.
I didn't see it either.
And it wasn't something I felt the desire to go back and rewatch to see him take Mike Tenay's shoe off. Terry Taylor was now with the 3 Live crew who were dancing and agreed they were high. Simon and Swinger came up and bragged about how they're the tag team champions. Conan called them gay, so Jeff Jarrett came up and hit Gilberti with a guitar while Simon and Swinger just watched and did nothing in response.
Yeah, K-Dog also took a shot at Gilberti, who showed up, saying it was rich coming from someone who lost their virginity to themselves. If that's the case with Glen Gilberti, one, Missy Hyatt should have investigated because she's an expert in this. And two, ew!
It's best to not think about it too much. It really, really is best to not think about this too much. We then got a video for the return of Rowdy Roddy Piper. And then, 83 minutes into the show, Tenay announces that next week is the Super X Cup. And Tenay did this plug so poorly that Don West had to explain what the hell he was talking about. The way Tenay explained it, like there's going to be 8 people, and 4 are going to be from the U.S., and 4 are going to be from international. He didn't even explain that it was a tournament. Don West had to cover for Mike Tenay, which might be the funniest thing I've ever said on this show. And then Mike Tenay threw to a package about the Super 8 tournament, which is not what's going to be next week. That is the ECWA show, the Super 8. Now, this I thought was a very poor video package. So what they did was, it was basically just one static shot, and they showed all the names of the people in the tournament. And it went like 2 minutes. Instead of, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, have everybody cut a 15-second promo and put it in there and intersperse it with a whole bunch of high-flying, spots from X Division matches in the past. And again, this is
everybody
the first time
in this. Sorry,
mm-hmm.
I was going to say, everybody in this tournament, apart from Nosawa and Teddy Hart, have wrestled for TNA in the past. So you had footage of them doing X Division stuff.
No, they taped the first 4 matches last week. You could have shown everybody doing a dive or something.
Yeah.
You didn't have to say, "Oh, this was this is what we taped last week." But you could have done something to be like, "Hey, look at this hot tournament we're gonna have next week. Here's all the people in it, and here's them all saying a couple seconds." So you can at least get something of a familiarity, especially with the 4 people who weren't TNA regulars. Because again, it's not like they weren't there last week. They couldn't have filmed a couple promos here or anything.
You see, that requires forward thinking. TNA has never had forward thinking in their life except for a couple years ago.
But again, it's like, this is the first time it got brought up, was 83 minutes into the show. And this is a show that we had been hyped for like a month because we knew it was coming. And we're like, yeah, I can't wait for the Super X Cup. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting for the acknowledgement of the Super X Cup. And it never gets brought up. And it's like, literally, they could have plugged it after the first match and really set the stage. When Jerry Lynn and Michael Shane wrestled, it's like, hey, these are 2 of the 8 guys in the Super 8 It's Super 8. Now I'm doing 10A. In the Super X Cup next week, man, what if they're in the semifinals against each other? Now, speaking of that, they show us the brackets, which, hey, at least was something. The brackets for this are going to be Juventud Guerrera versus Nassau, Johnny Storm versus Teddy Hart, Jerry Lynn versus Chris Sabin, and Michael Shane versus Frankie Kazarian. And the funny thing is, when I saw that bracket and realizing that Frankie Kazarian was not on this show, Chris Sabin was not on this show, I'm like, okay, so they won their matches, and Jerry Lynn and Michael Shane wrestle because, well, they're the two people who lost the first round match taped last week that they don't have to wrestle once or twice on before and after this show. So I'm like, okay, so Shane and Lynn lose their matches, which we'll wait till next week to see if I was Nostradamus or not. Now, so any other thoughts leading into next week's Super X Cup?
Something that you've hyped up. I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
So I always get told that these Super X Cups, World X Cups, are some of the best things that TNA have done. So we'll talk more about it next week, and hopefully all that hype is true.
Like, I knew the final was great because on one of those ancillary programs that TNA did, it may have been the TNA in 60 or whatever, they put Chris Sabin versus Juventud Guerrera on one of the shows. Spoiler alert, that's the final. So I had seen the final before, so I knew that was fucking great. But I'd never seen the whole show and the whole tournament, which we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
So then we get our main event, which is NWA World Champion AJ Styles with Vince Russo versus Raven. Now you remember I mentioned that 83 minutes into the show, Tenay and West started talking about the Super X Cup and threw it to a 2-minute video package. So you might be like, wow, they gave these guys close to half an hour. Well, not quite, because by the time we got the Super X Cup stuff, then we got the video package for this match, then we got the intros for this match, then we got Borash doing the in-ring introductions of the match. It was at least 10 minutes had passed. So, hey, it's still enough time for a 20-minute match in theory. Now, this was honestly one of the best matches in TNA we've seen this year.
Yeah.
Now, I did take it down a peg for the expected interference. And recall last week I said that 11 people would interfere in this match. That was my prediction. So let's see if I was right. Raven used his size to bully AJ in and out of the ring as the match began. AJ tried going for some kind of move, but Raven stopped him and hoisted him out of the ring to the floor. AJ took a side Russian leg sweep into the barricade, and Russo jumped on the apron to distract Raven. Interference number 1, which lasted long enough for AJ to uppercut Raven in the groin and take over. Punk and Julio came out to carry Russo to the back,
2 and 3.
interfering guys 2 and 3. West calls Raven the hometown favorite, and then had to explain that Raven isn't actually from Nashville, just that the fans really like him. AJ grabbed the chair and was warned not to use it, so he used it. Raven then threw it in AJ's face, which was Kid Cash's move that he stole from Sabu. We then had a Sabu tribute continuing as AJ went for a triple jump move, but Raven instead just held the chair up and let AJ crash into it. Raven used a Styles Clash, but Sinn broke it up, making him the 4th person to interfere. AJ used the even flow DDT, but Raven kicked out. AJ accidentally kicked Sinn off the off the apron, AJ pushed Raven into the corner to take out the referee, and Raven got the visual pin off an even flow. Slash interfered next to be the 5th guy. He had powder thrown in his face and couldn't tell the difference between 180-pound AJ Styles and 250-pound Raven, so AJ took a whirlybird powerbomb. Shane Douglas ran in next to get fought off. Douglas kicked Raven low, and AJ won with a Styles Clash. So yes, only 6 people interfered in this match.
What restraint?
Yes. There's too much goddamn interference. Then it knocked it down a couple pegs for me. I gave it a 7.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 6 out of 10 because, once again, sing along with me, folks. Rudy Charles is a fucking moron. I mean, how many times was there clear interference or DQ stuff right there? Like,
Hey, he told AJ not to use the belt, and then AJ immediately used the belt. Or not the belt, the chair. Excuse me.
Once again, Rudy Charles is a fucking moron.
So
you
if
know
that
who else
wasn't
agrees
enough,
with me that Rudy Charles is a fucking moron?
your grandmother?
She's dead and has been dead since I was 6 months old.
She probably would still think Rudy Charles was a fucking dumbass.
Yeah. But TNA wise, you wanna know who agrees?
Chris Harris and D'Lo Brown?
Exactly.
So after the match, Russo runs back down to grab the title belt. Chris Harris and D'Lo Brown are somehow at ringside because they are offended by Raven being screwed out of the world title for some reason. Chris Harris ordered the referee to either restart the match or reverse the decision, and the referee realized that he can choose option 3, which was neither, and just leave. Christopher Daniels, Simon, and Swinger ran in for more fighting. Stone Cold Jeff Jarrett ran in for the save, taking out all the heels on his own. Eric Watson announces that the 10 guys will beat the bloody hell out of each other by having Wednesday Bloody Wednesday in a cage, brother, which was War Games with weapons. And I wrote, who is actually in this goddamn match? Dusty Rhodes came out at one point, and Watts said that he himself would be the referee. Dusty, who I thought was, because there was only 4 baby faces out there, so I'm like, okay, Dusty's going to be the match. Nope, he is going to be, well, he says that he's the keeper of the key to the cage. Turns out that wasn't right either, but that's what he says. And Russo sent the heels down to the ring for a fight. Now then, the show goes off the air with a 4-pack of baby faces, Jeff Jarrett, D'Lo Brown, Chris Harris, and Raven, and a heel group of AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Shane Douglas, Simon Diamond, Johnny Swinger, Sinn, Slash, and the Red Shirts. There were 9 heels and 4 baby faces to build up to next week's 5-on-5 match that they never actually told us who was actually in the damn match. Now, I made the assumption that I turned out to be correct, that James Storm is the last babyface. And, I mean, when I read off the 9 names of the babyfaces, the 9 names of the heels, pardon me, you could probably guess what 5 are in the match. But still, it would have been a nice thing if they would have told us, here are the 5 people on each team in the match. Instead, it was, oh, we're going to have war games, there's going to be weapons, and it's like, oh, great, let's next week. Bye, everybody.
This company.
They can't
6 out of 10 for the match.
Like, they could have made this a better storyline. They could have announced at the beginning of the show, hey, Eric Watts, the director of Authority, has announced that there's going to be next week, Wednesday Bloody Wednesday, and explained that it's War Games. And they could have done this whole thing during the episode that, it's going to be Jeff Jarrett, D'Lo Brown, and America's Most Wanted, and they have to get a 5th guy, and they want Raven. But Raven, he has feuded with everybody on the babyface side. So who knows if he wants to be on a team with them. And here's the heel side, AJ and Daniels and Douglas and Simon and Swinger. And they're the strong heel unit. And now we're plugging it throughout the show that, hey, next week, we're going to sell a world title match this week, which AJ versus Raven. But next week, oh my God, Wednesday Bloody Wednesday in a cage. You don't want to fucking miss this. But they didn't promote anything. They half-ass promoted the Super X Cup, and half-ass is a very, very, nice way of saying their promotion. Yeah. And then Wednesday Bloody Wednesday, they didn't even really tell you. It's like, you knew that it was going to be War Games, but they couldn't call it War Games because WWE owned the trademark. Actually, WWE didn't even own that trademark at the time. You know who did own the War Games trademark in 2003?
Turner?
No, Major League Wrestling. Because WWE abandoned the mark and MLW filed it. And so MLW had War Games for years until WWE eventually bought it from Court Bauer. They probably bought it around the time they put out the War Games DVD that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to the end of the show. And again, despite all the ranting and raving I did, I still called this a not bad episode of TNA. Overall match quality, a 4.07 as an average. Overall enjoyment. Now, this is where I might have lost my mind when I said this, but 5.5 out of 10. Why did we need interference in every single fucking match on this show? There were
And why did
7
it always
matches.
have to be Rudy Charles that's the victim of the interference?
Rudy Charles is a bad referee.
Yeah,
Like
why
he's
is
still he's in WWE right now. He got a lot better in 20 years, but like I still have a grudge against him for being this crappy TNA referee. And he's the senior referee because they can't afford Scott Armstrong anymore.
Or Charles Robinson.
Well, Charles Robinson was never with them. He's been in WWE the whole time. Like Abyss and the Sandman didn't need interference. D'Lo and Sonny Siaki didn't need interference. Michael Shane and Jerry Lynn didn't really need interference. 3 Live Crew versus Shane Douglas and the Disciples of the New Church didn't need interference. All those matches had lots of interference. And especially, and we mentioned this like every time, like remember when the fucking Raven Jarrett match with 13 people running in? The rest of the show had run-ins in every fucking match. It makes it mean a lot less when you do it all the fucking time. And I'm sorry, Vince, that you don't know a second story to tell, but there's other ways to build a fucking feud than having interference in every fucking match.
Mm-hmm.
Future
Did you hear
Bill.
him go off? Did you hear him go off on like Chris Van Fleet's show?
Why was Vince Russo on Chris Van Vliet's show? Is Chris Van Vliet really like that bad off now that he's got to interview Russo? Where he watched Chris Van Vliet and then went off on Chris Van Vliet?
No, this was an interview with Chris Van Vliet.
Thankfully, that has not popped up in my feed ever. But go ahead.
Said wrestling is the same anymore, and defended his crash TV style. But back to the show at hand. This was an okay show. Like you said, it wasn't bad, but I'll be honest, it wasn't good.
Now, the future build, because again, looking forward to the Super X Cup, which by no thanks to them, I'm looking forward to it. 6.5 out of 10. And I wrote that I might be more excited for Wednesday Bloody Wednesday if they'd bother to put more effort into announcing the match than that insane final segment on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us an overall rating of a 5.36. Go figure.
Who knew?
So that does it for TNA. By the way, more breaking news. Remember how Speed has disappeared from WWE's Twitter page?
Yeah.
Apparently, it has been decided that Speed will continue. Asterisk. Speed will now be part of NXT. Yeah.
So those short 5-minute matches are going to be part of the NXT brand?
No. Short 3-minute matches are going to be part of the NXT brand. Except for when Sol Roca defends her title at No Mercy, where that is a 5-minute match. But the tournament matches, the build up to Sol Roca's title defense, are 3-minute matches.
I hate this concept.
Hey, to Vince Russo, 3 minutes is an Iron Man match.
That's true.
All right, so that does it for TNA. Anything else you want to plug before we press the stop button?
Yeah, I would like to. I didn't talk about the game that I was playing while I was watching this.
I think some of our listening audience might question you playing a video game while watching the show.
Oh, don't worry. It's just SimCity for the Super Nintendo, so
Mm-hmm.
you have that downtime, so you're good to go.
Alrighty then. By the way, 40 years of pay-per-view, Book 2, 1991 through 1993, currently scheduled to be released on October 1st. So, yeah, get ready for that. Buy Book 1 if you haven't already. Easily the greatest book about pro wrestling ever written. And this is going to be the second one. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Lay's stacks are better than Pringles. Fight me.